Lions roar. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, we're diving into a scenario that feels like it could be tomorrow's headline, an event that could literally set the Middle East on fire. February 28th, 2026. Out of nowhere, a huge, coordinated air and missile attack kicks off. It's the United States and Israel, and their targets are all over Iran. I mean, the entire world just stops and holds its breath. And just when you think it can't get more intense, bam! A stunning announcement comes from the White House. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. And the goal? Pretty straightforward. Cut the head off the snake and hope it sparks a revolution. One thing becomes tragically clear. People are dying. The confusion starts to settle and the human cost comes into focus. Iranian state media starts putting out the numbers. And the initial count of people killed inside Iran from these strikes, at least 201. And that number, 201, isn't just a number, right? Reports start flooding in that it wasn't just military sites that got hit. Civilian areas were struck too. And then you hear the most horrific story of all, from the city of Minadab. A school was apparently hit, and over 80 schoolgirls were reportedly killed. I mean, a detail like that, it just pours gasoline on the fire. Okay, so you can't hit a country like Iran on this scale and expect them to just take it. A response was coming for sure. The only question was, how big was it going to be? And the answer came fast. The retaliation was immediate, and it was ferocious. This was a direct, full-on assault targeting American and Israeli assets all across the region. And look at the sheer scale of this counterattack. It was everywhere. We're talking missiles and drones hitting Israel, even near Tel Aviv. And that was just the start. Then came a wave of attacks on U.S. bases in, get this, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iraq.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God!
This wasn't just a revenge strike, it was a coordinated regional assault. And just like the first strikes, this retaliation wasn't clean. It had its own tragic civilian cost. We started hearing reports about stray missiles hitting apartment buildings in Bahrain, right near the US Fifth Fleet. And get this, even Dubai's massive international airport got hit. The war was already spilling out, affecting everyone. So while all this is happening in the air, missiles flying everywhere, an equally critical battle is starting to brew on the ground, inside Iran itself. And this one is a fight for control. Which brings us back to that massive question, the one the strikes were designed to force. If the supreme leader really is gone, then who's in charge? Who is running the country and, more importantly, the military? Now, on paper, there's a process for this. The Iranian constitution is pretty clear. There's this group of 88 senior clerics called the Assembly of Experts. They're supposed to get together and pick the next guy. Simple enough, right? That's how it's supposed to go. But we're not in a by-the-book situation, are we? The country's under attack, and you've got the super powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. They're the real ideological muscle of the military, and they might not feel like waiting around for a bunch of clerics to make a decision. The big fear here is that the IRGC just bypasses the whole process, seizes control, and puts their own guy, or maybe even a military council, in charge. So you gotta ask, why? Why take such a huge, world-altering risk? To understand that, we need to rewind a bit and look at what was going on in Washington that led to this moment. This didn't just happen in a vacuum. It's really the climax of years of escalating tension. Think about it. Back in 2020, the US kills General Soleimani. Then in 2025, there are strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. And now, 2026, Operation Lion's Roar goes for the head of the entire regime. You can see the pattern, right? Each step is a bigger and bigger confrontation. So what was the official reason? According to US officials, they had a whole list of goals. 1, put a permanent stop to Iran's nuclear program. 2, neutralize their missile threat. 3, dismantle the leadership that's sponsoring violence. And 4, the big one, create an opportunity for the Iranian people to make a change. But back home in Washington, this was anything but a moment of unity. You had a pretty clear split. A lot of Republicans were praising the move, calling it decisive and necessary. On the other side, many Democrats were highly critical, saying, hold on, this is an act of war, you didn't get congressional approval, and you might have just dragged us into a massive new conflict. Which leaves us hanging on the biggest question of all. What happens next? I mean, where does this all go? Because right now, the whole situation is incredibly unstable. Well, you can really break down the potential fallout into three big buckets. First, there's the military front. We could just get stuck in this awful cycle of strikes and counterstrikes that spirals into a much bigger war. Then there's the political front inside Iran. You could see a really brutal power struggle between the clerics and the IRGC. And finally, the economic front. Think about the global oil supply, about air travel. Major disruptions could be coming. So here we are, standing on the edge of a cliff. Was this a decisive blow for freedom that will actually lead to a better future for Iran, like the White House claims? Or was this the first shot in a devastating new war that's going to swallow up the entire region for years? The terrifying thing is, right now, no one has the answer.